Well, I've been working on this, so it's just a this is actually from a bit of gear from I got from work, the base. That's off a LiDAR actually, and I cut it off cut it out of some other stuff, and this is one of my cast from aluminium cans and swarf chunks of aluminium, and I've got this drilled on the base. And I just did it to mount the camera as a phone as a web camera on my for my computer for Zoom calls and so forth, but also for doing video for YouTube. And I'm getting ready. Dale Kingsmill from Monarch's factory is going to be doing she and I are getting together next Tuesday for our next round of computer programming. We're actually probably going to start programming this time. And so I want to mount my Zoom recorder because the audio's, I tried it out with my headphones, linked into the computer, the Bose headphones, and it was clipping and I didn't like it. So if I can mount this about, I measured it up, about 290 millimeters out from the base, so that about there, if I get the zoom down there, I can have it recording the voice while we're zooming, and then I can cut that in. So I've got a block of aluminium here that I'm going to make a little clamp, and I'll get a piece of aluminium, not that probably, but yeah. And I've got a 1/4 inch 20 stainless screw. Whoops, that I just dropped on the ground. There we go. So I'll turn up another of these. There's a video that no one's watched showing how I made this nut, knurled nut in my lathe. So I'll make up another one of those to lock the zoom into position. But along with doing that, and I do have a bunch of bits and pieces as accessories to the zoom. I've got, I think in the front or the back of this, I even have a remote control. Yes, I do. Oops. So that'll all be handy. I've got all the gear to hook it in for my SLR as well, but I'm not using my digital SLR. So, yeah, someone's doing some mulching in the background, if you can hear that roaring and crunching. Sounds like a professional mulcher. Yes, anyway, so I'll get this on here with able to lock it, and then get that mounted, and that'll just allow me to do that. But one thing I did while I was doing this, just to as an experiment, is this base plate was not beautifully machined. And it wasn't flat. It's got contours, you can see in there. So I messed it up a little bit, mucking about first. I'll put this down. And I cut some sort of mess here, but I've got a nice radius here. And I did that, the milling machine. You can go into this control and you can machine an arc. So this is just your normal positioning mode, but so set those to 0, 0 for no particular reason, I guess. Got it right. But if I go arc, to do it flat on the table, just, you know, with the radius being, it's the XY plane of the machine. And you can do a quadrant so you can do a quadrant, and if you want to do from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, you use the mode 1. 12 o'clock to 3 is mode 3, or type 3, and then 3 till, so here from 3 o'clock going clockwise, and 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock is type 1, 12 to 3 is type 3, 3 to 6 is type 8, and 6 to 9 is type 6. So you just go in here and you set that, which part of the arc you want to do, and then tool minus, you can have the tool on the outside of that curve, so it goes around the outside, going around the outside of the circle, or you can go around the inside, and minus puts it around the inside, plus puts it around the outside, so that does cut a compensation. And you put in your radius that you want to cut, and the till diameter, and then the maximum step you want to do in each individual movement, you do with maximum set. So I've got 1, and then once you've got that set, it goes through and you just zero each of these points. It goes around. I've got, in this case, there's 28 points, so you just go to there, and then you move to 0, 0, and then you hit the next one, you move to 0, 0, you move to 0, 0, and it actually describes the arc. So I might set up the camera and do a time lapse while I clean up this. It doesn't matter, but I don't like this sort of ugly bit here and that ugly bit there. So if I do a time lapse, I can just put a radius around here and make that look prettier. And if nothing else, even if no one else watches it, in a year's time when I go to do a radius again, I'll have a video recording of how to set the parameters and where you need to be to get the trick I've discovered, I'd forgot, I had done it once before, but the trick I've missed is when you do each one of these, you move it to the beginning of the arc, and then you zero the readout, and then it drives around the arc, and then when you get to the end of that first quadrant, you go back out of the mode, radius cutting mode, and you zero it at the point you're at, and then you go back in and you edit to get the next quadrant type, and then it starts from there, and then when you finish, you repeat. So you go around, so you start each part of the quadrant at the beginning position with it 0, 0, and it describes the arc for that. So I might just tidy this up and then make a video of it, make a little video of it doing it, or with me doing it, but just to record it for posterity, because one day I'm going to want to do this again and I won't remember how. So yeah, I'm very COVID fuzzy at the moment, can't get to a hairdresser, and I'm starting to turn bushman. But anyway, I will make the mount for the Zoom recorder, and then I will tidy this up and record that. Okay, I'm gonna cut this for no reason other than making sure I've got a record of how to use this feature. There's a little bit of untidiness on the top of this, which doesn't matter at all, but I will tidy it up just to record the process. So what I'm going to do now is center the cutter, or cut set of the machine, and zero it out onto the center of the bore I'm going to cut. So to do that, I'm going to use my wobbler, this little tool here, and that'll allow me to zero it out. Okay, so it's half, that just sets that to half the range of movement, and that's X set. Now Y. And Y half. So I now have the the readout centered on the bore here. So swap out my wobbler. And put in the cutter. So I'm going to be using a 20mm diameter end mill. I've got a slot drill as well, but I want the end mill to get me the maximum number of cutting tips. Okay, here's my bit of paper. So if I want to go around starting at 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I'd use 1. So if I decide I'll start this just for the fun of it, I'll start it up at 12 o'clock. Start here and I'll go around 3, 6, 9, 12. So the first I need to have is 3. So I have to set it to type 3 on the arc. But before I do that, well, I'll do that. So if I go into arc and I go type and I go 3 enter, so what I want to do now is actually go out of the radius. So if I go into arc, I can see I've got type 3. And if I go out of arc, now if I want to start at 12 o'clock, if this is 12 o'clock and I want to start at 12 o'clock, so I've got a type 3, I need to put the cutter in the correct start position and zero it. So the correct start position for this, if I'm going to have a 65 radius, 63, half of 63 is 30, 65 is 32. So I need to drive this to 32 minus 10 is 22.5. So, given that this is a 20mm cutter, if I want to get the outside part outside of this cutter for the radius to the correct position to start the radius, then if I'm doing a 65mm radius, then I need to have this put out at half of 65, which is 32.5. But then I've got to subtract the radius of the cutter. So the cutter's 20, so I need to take 10. So that gets me at 22.5. And that needs to be zeroed. And then if I also go back into here, I need to set the radius to 32.5. Enter. Now, what I can do is, I have to drive that to 0, 0, it is. And if I go to 0.2, then I have to drive. Now, you have to be aware because of the way that this goes, you have to be aware that if I'm cutting from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, oh, we've got some neighbours outside, that's all right. So if I want to go from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I have to move it in the y-axis first, because if I move it in the x-axis, then it'll bite into there and then I'll move it. So I have to move it first in the y and then in the x, and I have to do that all the way around to here. You've got to be aware of which way you go first. If you move in this case from here to here, if I move this direction first, then it'll bite outside of what it should do. So I have to move in the y-axis and then the x-axis. When I get to this quadrant, if I move from here to here, if I move the y-axis first, it'll bite as well. So I have to use the x-axis, so it swaps. Here I have to use, from here to here I have to use y-axis first and then x. From here to here I have to use x and then y, and so on round the quadrants. So it's just something to be aware of. So I'm going to get my z-axis set. So I've just set the Z. I'll go to 0.1 and I will get X in the correct position. So X is set, and now I need to set Y. Okay, so I'm coming up at 1. Okay, so now I've got to 0.1, now I need to drive to 0.2. So I want to move in my Y and now in my X. And now I need to go to 0.2. Set Y, and X. So I put this back up onto here. So now I go 0.4, and I need to set my Y and drive to 0. And now set my Y and my 0. and it'll do maybe 30 of these. This radius, it was 28 for the previous radius, and I just work my way around. I'm not worried about 0.01. And so on. So I traverse around. So I'll put this down onto the job, and I'll probably speed this up. Okay, so we now have a nice arc from there to there, and that took 33 steps. So now what I have to do is go back out of, we can see that our X and Y values have both moved. So I have to 0 and 0, and now, actually 0, Z while I'm at it, I go in and I go type, and to go from 3, I need type 8, enter, and now I start again, but with 0, 0, and I just drive. So here we go again. And of course on this one, I'm moving my X axis first before I move my Y, because I want to move this clear out that way, so then I can push that up that way. So I've had to reverse my order for this quadrant. Okay, so I've now made it halfway. So I need to go out of radius again and 0 both of those axes. Go back in, and I need to go to mode 6 now. Enter. And we're away again. But this time I have to move the y-axis first. And again, now to mode 1, 0, 0. Type 1. And away we go again. This time, x-axis first. All right. So there it is. A fairly nice radius. So, what diameter do we have? That is not bad. Looks like it might be a little under, but then that's going to have a bit of roughness in there. 59.9. So we're in kind of in the 0.1. Actually, I reckon that's pretty close to 65. Just you've got little feed marks in around here. Can't see. Yeah, there we go. You see there's little feed marks in there. So I reckon if you chose, that's 1mm step. If I chose a finer step, you could almost use that for bearings. So there you go. That's a there you are. That's a nice little trial, and I'm glad to have that recorded for future reference. So here's the arm. Sorry for the backlighting, but there's my clamped on, and it's got a little pin in there to clamp that on, and it's going to go in here, so the camera will be over the top and the zoom will be pointing out from underneath.